Throughout the term, we have discussed how humans and machines interact with each other through different mediums. Whether it is humans controlling the machines directly or interpreting computer output, the connection between humans and machines is one that is constantly evolving to better fit what we want the computers to be. As we discussed in class, computers began as simple machines like ENIAC, where the only interaction that the human in the machine could have was the operator switching positions of wires and connections, and then the computer outputting results. This is obviously not how we interact with computers today. As computers evolved, so do how people thought about them, as well as how they interacted with them. Around the time of ENIAC, computers are basically about as giant calculators, and were used to calculate trajectories of missiles and other similar projects. As they progressed, new fields were opened to the wonders of computing. In one of our readings, The Incredible Machine, the creators showcased many of the new uses that people had for machines. We see new ways of interacting with computers, such as light pens and electronic displays, as well as new ways to use computers, like circuit designing and computer generated voices and images. This marks the first real opportunity people had to go beyond writing calculations and introduce some creativity in how we interact with computers. We see graphic designers discussing how to make images on not only electronic displays, but also to use computers to generate images using black and white dots. We also see sound engineers using computers to generate music and vocals. But the one thing that often gets overlooked in something like this is the fact that they also introduced another form of creativity in the field of computing, programming languages, that were introduced as punch cards in this video. Programming languages are one of the most common ways that I personally interact with computers. They are a complex way of talking to the computer that earn the title of language in every sense of the word. They are a set of rules that computers impose on the person writing, but also a set of rules that the language's creators have imposed upon the computer. They are the way that allows programmers to tell computers what to do and how to get them to accomplish what we need them to do. Programming itself is oddly a place where human interaction with computers can be just as creative as making computer generated music or images. The way in which a programmer decides to go about solving a problem shows a lot about their thought process. Programming languages have allowed us to implement our algorithms in creative ways, but often the process of writing them is itself an algorithm. Programmers must make sure that they follow the rules of the language, and to do so often fall into patterns of developing and testing code until they achieve a result that they are happy with. Outside of programming, we've advanced how the layperson interacts with computers. The introduction of play into the world of computing brought new ideas into these interactions. Now, instead of just waiting for an output like the computations of ENIAC, or the image and sound files like those in the Incredible Machine, people's main interaction with the machine was the actual experience of play. We sampled this in our post for whenever we played a game on the Internet Cafe. Games like Space Invaders ushered in a new era of programs that relied more on the actual experience of interacting with the computer and not necessarily awaiting a result. Since then, games and generally programs have advanced to new levels of complexity. In my Automated Opponents in Video Games post, I discuss how in a video game that I currently play, computers have become complex enough to simulate other opponents. With computers being able to simulate a whole player in a game and being a worthy match at that, a new way about thinking about computers during our interactions has arisen. Computers are now complex enough that we can start to see where the next steps in technology will take them. Automation is a growing danger that many people see on the horizon. Automation threatens to replace jobs all over the world, from factory workers and truck drivers to accountants and programmers. Some jobs are safer than others, as mentioned by Lucia Giordano in her Human Error in Computer Translation. Certain jobs will always need a human component, and computers just aren't up to the task yet. Lucia gives the example of language processing, where many of our current programs just can't detect the nuances that are the central way in which many languages use to get subtler points across. Looking into the future, we have discussed artificial intelligence and the effects that would have on interactions between humans and computers. In our exercise where we had to write an entry for Professor Bot, we examined how a sample interaction might take place between a human and an artificial intelligence that has taken over a job via automation. Anton brings up several points in his response that deal with how these interactions with machines in these jobs would change. In his response, he notes that machines in these positions are usually catering to the average. Computers won't necessarily have the creativity that is required to come up with solutions to new edge cases. Even when dealing with responses that don't necessarily count as edge cases, computers always need to have their input formatted in a certain way to derive insight from it. This forces people who would interact with these machines to change how they communicate and express themselves for the computer to be able to do their job effectively. As computers evolved, so did the way that people interacted with them. We have consistently moved towards being able to interact with computers in in a way that is more natural to us. We have gone from simply moving wires around to having artificial intelligence that will eventually be able to hold a conversation. Although we as humans started the process by designing interfaces to interact with computers, new forms of creativity and interactions have arisen. Computers shape our interactions with them as much as we shape how we can interact with computers.